Butler Turner, leader of the opposition, is in studio today. Mrs. Butler Turner, you are now the leader of the opposition. In the House of Assembly, what do you see your role as now? You've been an advocate over the years as an opposition member in the House. You were very strong in opposition in the early days of this new Christie administration. Many people saw you as really the key opposition figure in the House. They say they haven't seen that same Loretta Butler Turner in recent weeks, in recent months.
I think that there's certainly merit to that. At the onset, I have always been that strong advocate against the PLP. I know that I took Perry Christie on head to head because I truly felt that he was not the right person to lead our country. I still feel that way today. I think that a part of what we see evolving is not just now my struggle with the PLP and ensuring that we get them and depose them out of office, but, it's been almost a double fight at this stage. And so, your energies are being pulled in different directions. And I believe that I am still that very strong voice. Just yesterday, in the House of Assembly, I was very strong on the piece of legislation that the governing side had brought. And I think that it would be wrong to not be present, to continue to hold their feet to the fire on so many things. But when you are dealing, as we are now, in the midst of a campaign where one has to fight to retain a seat, where one has to fight all detractors, especially the FNMs who seem that their feelings have been hurt because of the constitutional position that the Seven took. You find that it's not just one focus as I would have had initially. And my mere focus at the start was always to uphold the good work of the FNM and to demonstrate to the Bahamian people the faults of this incompetent government.
All of those individuals who encourage you to become the leader of the opposition have essentially removed themselves from the possibility of returning to Parliament in 2017.
Correct, and that is also a challenge, because I believe that in the mix we certainly have persons who still have a lot that they can offer our country. But the country is in a place right now under this PLP where Bahamians are confused, Bahamians are hurting, and it appears that unless one goes into a campaign right now really funded, it's going to be a difficult fight. Despite the fact that the PLP is an abysmal failure. Money is going to play a key role in this because of the vulnerability of the electorate. I think that when you look at the younger generation, the millennials, while they grasp the depth of where we are as a country, I think that their ties to political organizations are, diminished a whole lot more than our forebears. And so they're going to look a little more critically, strategically at where they fit into the scheme of things. But right now, as you can see, that everyone right now is jostling to get funding, to be relevant. And, without that, believe it or not, it's not easy, even though you may, in fact, be a very good individual.
But that speaks to the challenge of leadership. Leadership in our politics appears to be the most significant issue that we are not properly addressing. Some would say leadership has us in the dilemma that we find ourselves in right now.
Especially party leadership. And this is the point I wanted to draw on earlier. I think that when you look at the Bahamas at its very first change in 1967 under a Pindling government, Pindling iconically led this country for 25 years in a style that was emulated by his successors, both his successors being Ingram and Christie. That type of leadership is less relevant in my mind to the younger generation of being able to be almost dictatorial, autonomous in your leadership, godlike. And so that is the disconnect that we now have. If you look at Christie and the great lengths that he has been able to establish to reinforce himself despite his poor leadership style, you understand what we're looking at. It's that Pindling-esque type of era. And then you look at Ingram with the very same type of dominant spirit, with that Pindling-esque type of leadership, where once they leave office, they still want to live vicariously through the person, or, have great influence over that. Leadership, in my opinion, stems from the political organizations. And if you were to look at their constitutions, they are as archaic as our first prime minister.
So why would somebody like Loretta Butler Turner join a frontline, one of the major political parties, as opposed to taking the plunge and developing something that is distinctly different from what people have become accustomed to in frontline politics?
When I joined the Free National Movement about 30 years ago, it was certainly a party that was refreshing. It was different. It was under the leadership of Ingram, actually. I was voting for the FNM from 87, but actually to become a card-carrying member of the Free National Movement, there was a difference. In 1992, the Free National Movement represented the change that the people needed. It was a bringing together of all forces. Remember now, the Free National Movement is an amalgamation of the Dissident Eight, who were PLPs, Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield and all of them, and Arthur Folks. They were PLPs, joined up with the UBP to create this new entity. Success never came until Ingram came and sort of brought all of those factions together. That is what effective leadership does to galvanize the opposition. When Ingram took on the FNM, there were multiple factions in there. There still are. And that is the same sort of thing that I felt was important to galvanize. And so there might have very well have been a new entity, but you had to progress towards that. That is why I brought together the movers and shakers of the DNA to try and have this alignment. We might have become a Free National Movement as the PLP and the UBP became that. But that incubation period did not get past the incubation. It actually became
people speculate that the reason it didn't work is because of the whole issue of leadership. Who would lead an amalgamated opposition that included the Dissident Seven and the established organization, the DNA?
Absolutely. And that's your question about leadership. And I thought that in this new dispensation that we would move towards a natural progression as to who would be leader. Obviously, this whole narrative about me being greedy and wanting leadership has got to be dispelled, because if I'm prepared to take the leader of a political organization and give them the power, which I did in the Senate, and say that he is now the leader of opposition business, obviously there is a very strong conviction to know that we can grow our leadership, we can evolve to that leadership, we can allow the best leader to rise, because I'm not threatened as long as I know that the philosophy of doing the greater good for the Bahamian people is at the forefront. And that is ultimately what we lose, where we lose focus. Many of us want that leadership role. I was prepared to step aside if Branville would have been the better leader. I was prepared to step aside if someone else were the better leader. But we needed to have that opportunity to demonstrate that we can actually share, and we can evolve, and we can create a new entity that allows this to evolve outside of the parameters of these party constitutions.
We hear people say every day, we have to get rid of this PLP government.
Definitely.
That's what people are saying.
Definitely.
That's what the opposition forces are saying.
But here is the caveat. You don't trade in one bad horse for another. You try to pick the best. And unfortunately, in this environment where tribalism, partyism is so important, people buy wholesale a party, despite the fact that in that party you may have bad apples. We have got to move away and start to send the best people to Parliament. The best people may not necessarily be all in the FNM, all in the PLP, all in the DNA. And that is why it is important for the electorate to determine who are the best. That is where the best of the best is what the country needs now. And the best of the best does not come just from one political organization.
But people would say that because the opposition forces are fighting a common enemy, all the more reason they should try to put aside their differences.
That is
and come
exactly
together.
what I was trying to do. And when I said it, people say, oh, she's a basket case, she's an idiot. But that is exactly the narrative that needs to be told. But even in journalism, you have journalists that are quick to go to their favorite politician to get their narrative, to go to their favorite personality to get their narrative. And they assume many things. But, you know, that's human nature. And it is important for us as those who want to be legislators, whether in the leadership capacity or in the supporting role, to be able to clearly articulate. I think one mistake, or one of the mistakes that I made, and, I look at it, is that the narrative when we brought the DNA to the table, when we brought others to the table, was yucked away, and I did not speak to it proficiently so that people could have gotten an understanding. People had great hopes in the coalition.
But they wanted to see a coalition. They didn't see a coalition. What they saw was the appointment of some people in the Senate, and they saw the continued operation of independent groups working their own campaigns, trying to achieve their own agenda with no real discussion or no real announcement that this is an official coalition that we're establishing. And so they interpreted that to mean the DNA is moving in its direction. Loretta Butler Turner is moving in her direction.
Correction. On December the 19th, when we had the meeting and the press conference in the minority room with all of the officers of the DNA, with the 7 officers of the FNM who had taken over the opposition, and it is on video, and I've played it several times. We tend to forget. I stated right there at that time that this is where we were moving towards, to creating an alliance. Coalitions obviously take place after an election. But if we had that understanding, if we had that understanding at that point, then we would see the fruition of what we were hoping to achieve. So I said there and then.
Do you feel Bahamians would warm up to an alliance ahead of a general election? They are looking for stability.
Everything is new, and change has to happen. Change has to happen. I think that when you looked at the coming together, the disintegration of the UBP, the free PLPs to form the FNM, you'll see that they went through many of those apprehensions as well. But the FNM has now come to be a major political organization. Change has to happen. That's the only way that we're going to deepen our democracy. But many of us lose perspective of history. And so they talk about, why so close? The reality is time is probably never right to make change. People are always resistant to change. But change may not come at this year, but change is going to come. And we've made that first strike towards that. And after the dust is settled after the next election, you will begin to see discontent or happiness or whatever. But people are going to start crying out for the very same things that we, the 7, saw, that the DNA might have seen 5 years ago. The change and the evolvement of our country has to come. We cannot continue the status quo as we know it. The PLP and the FNM have gotten us where we are today. There has to be a directional change for this country.
So are you resolute in your commitment to continue to lead an opposition force following the next general election?
Absolutely. I am already on the ground campaigning as an independent because
So you will be running in Long Island?
I will be. I think that I have and owe a duty to the people that supported me, for them to determine whether or not I have been effective. Not for people who are outside of our constituency to make that determination for them. And I can tell you that on the ground, people want to have an opportunity to determine democratically who will be their voice in Parliament. You know, despite the differences between Loretta Butler Turner, the other 6 MPs, and the FNM, I have been the strongest opposition voice against the PLP. I continue to be that voice. You have people in the FNM don't even come to the House of Assembly anymore. You know, you cannot lead a country through press statements and through just campaigns. You've got to demonstrate your commitment, your conviction, your beliefs that this PLP is the worst government the country has ever seen. And you do not go into the booth and say, oh, I'm just going to pick the best of two evils. No, you're going to pick the best of what the country has to offer that is on the stage and offering themselves. That is how you start to have change. And my opposition voice, whether it is against the PLP, which I strongly believe that we need to get rid of, or whether it's against some other entity that is not going to, that does not do right. Now, if in fact the FNM prevails, which I think many people are hoping that would be the outcome, do you think that I'm going to sit idly by and not commend them if they're doing good, especially for my people in Long Island? Do you think I will sit idly by if they do not live up to their commitments the way the PLP have? This is what brings balance to the debate. This is what brings perspective to the performance of governments. Governments perform better when they have strong opposition forces.
You said the PLP and the FNM have us in the position that we find ourselves in
They've been
today.
the only two governments.
But you were a part of the government for 5 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And under the Free National Movement, while I was there, I can tell you that I believed in every single thing that the FNM has done. Today, I'm still a card-carrying member of the FNM.
Do you plan to continue to be a member of the FNM?
The Constitution of the FNM states that if a person runs against the party, they pretty much expel themselves from the party. Now, look at the position I'm in.
That puts you between a rock and a hard place if you want to continue.
That's okay. And I don't mind being between a rock and a hard place. I've been there many times before. I stand on conviction. To be between a rock and a hard place, I still have God with me. And at the end of the day, I remember what has always been told to me. Me and God are a majority. So it doesn't matter what humans, where they place you and how they try to define you. I define me. So to be between a rock and a hard place, that's politics. You cannot be fearful. You've got to stand up and fight so that you remove the rock and the hard place.
So you have no difficulty being in this uncomfortable position as leader of the opposition where people believe that you have not been as effective as you needed to be?
Is it because I haven't been effective as I need to be because I'm no longer Free National Movement?
I don't know.
Is that the perception? Because when I was there, defending Dr. Minnis and working hard and being that voice, I was exceptional. Now that I'm not a part, those very same people that said I was exceptional are the ones that saying I am not exceptional. I am that voice of opposition still. I am very much that voice. I will not back down from being that voice.
Is it possible for people to see a new political party following the next general election led by the Honorable Loretta Butler Turner?
All things are possible. Remember now, you have two prime ministers that ran as independents. Two prime ministers, Hubert Ingram.
But they had the accommodation of the opposition.
And nobody's giving me an accommodation this time. Nobody. I haven't asked for one. I have not looked for one because I believe that if I ask the PLP for accommodation, people would say, oh, she's going to go to the PLP. You know, I'm not going to do that. The F&M, on the other hand, were quick to name a candidate as soon as we did the constitutional move that we did. As a matter of fact, they wanted to be able to expel me that very same day. Unfortunately, many within the F&M did not know their own constitution, so it could not happen like that. So they created a tribunal to say that they will have discussions and a court, some type of court against me. That's never come to fruition. Get real. The reality is this. If the F&M were serious and they had a leg to stand on to expel me for doing that which is constitutionally correct, they would have done it. And if I hated the F&M that much, I would have challenged them, taken it to court, and proven that they did not have a legal footing. So the fact of the matter is, I am today not yet expelled, never been a card-carrying member of the PLP. I came into the F&M as an F&M, unlike many persons who the F&Ms call true F&Ms. Cecil Wallace Whitfield was a cabinet minister in Pindling's government.
So was Hubert Ingram.
Hubert Ingram was a minister in Pindling's government. So where is the true F&M? I've never been a part of Pindling's government or any PLP government for that matter. I am a true F&M because I have the ability to critically determine that the F&M is the party that I chose to be a part of. So it is a weak argument when they try to throw this nonsense out there regarding Loretta Butler Turner.
She's Milo Butler's granddaughter.
I am, and I'm very, very proud because Milo Butler did great things for everyone in this country, the downtrodden. I could never run away from my heritage. But when I saw what the PLP in the 1980s was doing to our country, I made a mature decision that I wouldn't be a part of that. And I believe that if Milo Butler were alive today, he would roll over in his grave to see where the PLP is.
This is Let's Talk Live on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. My very special guest in studio today is the Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Loretta Butler Turner. How do you respond to those people?
I think that Rodney Munker certainly evokes those sort of feelings. There are people that absolutely find him despicable, and there are people that actually admire and love him. I selected Rodney Munker. What many people do not know is that prior to the selection of a Rodney Munker, there were offers made to other persons whom we would consider suitable in our vernacular. But, you know, when I looked at the Rodney Munker scenario, Rodney Munker was appointed a officer of the Court of the Bahamas, a justice of the peace. That's not a low position.
Definitely not.
He was appointed a justice of the peace by the F&M, by Hubert Ingram to be exact. If a man can be a justice of the peace, that means that they are an officer of the court. What precludes them from becoming a senator? Now, Rodney Munker was very vociferous, adversarial toward me on many positions. And, you know, when I talk about bringing together opposing forces, this is a man that confronted Ingram when we brought the marital rape bill, when we stood for gender equality, and, I mean, took me to the dogs. If I want to be a successful leader, in my opinion, I cannot just pick friends, family, and lovers to be a part of a team of rivals. I've got to also try to embrace some of those rivals to bring them to the team, because some of them, despite the difficulties that individuals, they have influence as well. And that was one of the final reasons why we went with Rodney. And I think that, let me just say here very emphatically, do I agree with Rodney's modality of how he goes out and attacks people personally? No. I mean, I was the recipient of those attacks as well, prior to me making him that Senate. Did I believe that I could change him? I guess that's a very difficult thing. We as human beings tend to feel that we can start to get people to see our way of thinking and to come on board. So, you know, at the end of the day, some of the most vociferous voices against Rodney are the same ones that I offered that senatorial post to.
And they refused it.
Absolutely. Do they tell you that part? They don't. Because people do what is in their own personal interest. One of the first notes I got was from one of the individuals I offered that senator position to, who coincidentally was a senator previously. You know, and so the whole story needs to be told. Just like I selected a commoner. You know, when I say a commoner, I speak about a salt of the earth man, a Jude Knowles, who understands the struggle of family island life, of Long Island life, upstanding church man, upstanding family man, builder, community builder, local government person, exemplary background. But because he's not of the political class, he should not be made a senator. See, politics is about influence. Politics is about inclusion. That is what a lot of us lose face on. We don't want to include. We want to keep the same cronies and nepotism in charge so we continue to get the same result. Rodney Munker may not be the flavor of the day for everyone. Jude Knowles may not be either, but they do bring a perspective that some of us want to overlook and ignore. And politics must be more inclusive. You know, there are many persons, as I said, that are not in this political race because of lack of money. Politics should not be predicated on the amount of money you're able to get out of some influence peddler or your own personal wealth. There are many people in this Bahamas that have answers, that have solutions, but they do not come forward because they feel they're not a part of that political elite.
Do you feel the system has let Loretta Butler Turner down? The system in the political organization?
No, because then I'll be painting myself as they would want to say, oh, she's painting herself as a victim. You know the system, you got to deal with the system, and you have got to kick the system. So when I'm between a rock and a hard place, I'm kicking, I'm fighting.
Have you learned any lessons from this experience?
To say that I haven't learned would be a very big understatement. Yes, I have learned many things.
Is trust one of those lessons?
Trust is a huge part of it, because when an individual such as Loretta Butler Turner makes a decision based on information coming to her by influencers who invite you to do certain things. And I'm not talking about the 6 individuals that joined when we replaced leader of the opposition.
Outside of the parliamentary caucus.
Outside of the parliamentary caucus. When people commit themselves to making that change, and midstream, you see that commitment fade away, you realize maybe it's not just trust. They do trust you, but they just don't have the will to fight. And this is where this one man, one woman strong leadership comes into play. They expect to have that one person lift them on the kite tail. And if that is not happening, many people lose their courage. So yes, you must in fact be able to understand that when you stand for something, while you may begin with many, in the end, you end up in a very lonely place. That's why they say leadership is lonely.
In hindsight, do you regret doing any of what you've done so far?
You remember the Nelson Mandela statement that I use?
Mm-hmm.
I never lose, I learn.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. Regret is not a part of my personal vocabulary, because to try and to miss the mark, there's always a learning curve. I learn. I grow every day. And so, no, I don't regret a thing that I've done. And you know, at the end of the day, there are going to be young women, there are going to be young men that are going to thank me for making that stand, even if I missed the mark, because that part of the trail would have been blazed to make it a little easier for them to come behind. That change is going to come. That change must come, because the country stands on the precipice of the worst downgrades that we have ever seen. Unemployment is at its highest. Teenagers are being executed like mafia style. The reality is our dollar is worth a lot less than it did 5 years ago. Our economic prospects are out of whack. We don't believe that the PLP has done justice to that mega resort at Cable Beach. Has that perspective changed for me? You better believe not. I'm going to continue that fight, because at the end of the day, they are bad for this country. I believe that I need to be that voice in there to continue to advocate what I believe in and what thousands of other Bahamians believe in, but they do not have the strength to stand and openly come out and say, Loretta, I support you because of this whole nature of victimization, ostracizing, and disenfranchisement if they were to show their colors.
But some people would say all of that may be true. This administration may be bad, but what you're doing is helping to keep the possibility of them returning as the administration in place.
Me?
That's what they would say.
Well, they are lacking analytical skills. You know, at the end of the day, Bahamians have got to realize that I am not doing anything to keep this PLP in place. And that is an argument they're using, because I believe that there's a concerted effort to not have my dissenting voice in the mix. But I can tell you, the Bahamian people are going to want someone who is going to stand up for right. And that right may not always be a part of the team they support. And so if that is the excuse that they're using, it's a very poor excuse.
Let me get you to respond to a couple of text messages. Carlton, please ask Ms. Butler-Turner, why is she so bitter towards Dr. Minnis? Shouldn't she be upset with Hubert Ingram? He chose Minnis over her.
I'm not bitter towards Dr. Ingram, towards Dr. Minnis, you know. People do not know the many times that I sat with Dr. Minnis, and I told him, I said, Chief, listen, I'm not asking you to be my friend. Let me be the best DPM that you can have. This is truth. I've shared this with F&Ms. It is not Loretta. I've never employed surrogates to denigrate anyone in the F&M the way that I've been denigrated. You know, I am not bitter to Dr. Minnis. I was prepared to be the best deputy to him. But because of my strong voice, I believe there was intimidation. He felt intimidated. But you know, when you're the leader of a team, you use your best, and your best makes you look even better. And I think that that is a part, you know, without putting Dr. Minnis down, that is one of the things that Dr. Minnis lacked. He was unable to work with the team that he had in terms of leveraging whatever strengths they had. And I really never even wanted to challenge Dr. Minnis, you know. The story must be told that even when I was elected as the deputy leader, there were secret meetings held or meetings that I was excluded from. But, you know, that's water under the bridge. Let's not go back there. I have no personal differences with Dr. Minnis. I believe we could have been the best team moving forward. But since he didn't want me as his deputy, that was the problem.
Somebody saying, excellent guest. I was about to say, please spare us the history. But then, as I hear the wide range of conversation, I am proud of Mrs. Butler Turner. Somebody else is saying, good morning all. As a 40-year-old female, I love your spirit, Mrs. Butler Turner. I understand you. You are real and should have been the FNM leader. You are strong. Keep going. Signed, a DNA supporter.
Thank you.
This is Let's Talk Live on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. We'll take our final commercial break and come back and wrap up this edition of the show.
This and every Thursday, it's Trivia Thursday.
Trivia Thursday.
Your BTC number is your passport and entry in.
Day, I will have the ability to write my memoir, but I believe also in the essence of time, people will come to determine exactly what good it is that I was attempting to do. And so that will be up to the Bahamian people. I don't wish to create a legacy of my own.
People are looking for strong leadership. There are those who were looking to Loretta Butler Turner and the others who left with her to form a political party ahead of the general election, looking for an alternative to the PLP and the FNM. Are you disappointed that that did not happen? Are you disappointed that you didn't take a different route toward developing a possible organization that would give people an alternative?
I'm very disappointed it didn't happen. I can tell you that I did most things within my grasp of attempting to do that. And there were people that had very high hopes that it would happen. Sometimes things don't happen in the time that we wanted, but you know, it's about survival of the strongest. At this point, I think the strongest has to survive, and who knows what will happen, you know, at some point in the future. It is important that as we look across the political landscape, my belief is that the interest of country needs to be first. And we've got to look at those persons that truly want what is better for our country. And so that is where I'm focused at this time. Who knows what the future will hold? I believe that when you look at an Ingram, a Christie, they didn't know what the future would hold. Ingram became leader of the Free National Movement. Christie went back to the PLP, became leader of the PLP. We do not know what the future holds. We only know who holds the future. And while we are here, let's continue. And this is my mantra. Let's continue to do what we feel is right, and that is what I'm going to do.
Do you believe in spoiling the ballot, as some have been advocating?
No. I believe that people have a very powerful right to exercise their democratic choice to a government. When you spoil your ballot, you are deferring the responsibility of governance to others. You need to go in and stand for what you believe in. And, you know, it's in the privacy between you and your God. And so I do not believe in spoiled ballots. If you want to go in and spoil a ballot, then stay home.
What do you say to young people who are voting for the first time and find themselves in a dilemma, similar to the situation you find yourself in, between a rock and a hard place, and they're trying to determine, who do I vote for? What should I do on election day?
Do not be influenced by others. Sometimes you have to walk to your own drumbeat, and that is important. That is what I am doing. My symbol is going to be the heart as I move into this, because it's about caring, it's about sharing, it's about serving. But I had considered the drum, because I know that I don't always dance to the music of the Pied Piper. And so I thought that if I beat my own drum, that is what I will walk to. I admonish young people to sit, get as much information as they can, and determine what sort of future they want. Their future is not tied to a color. Their future is tied to their own convictions.
And what do you say to your constituents as the incumbent returning to Long Island as an independent?
That with God's help, you will grade me on what I have done. And if you want continued advocacy, hard work, loyalty to you, then you will vote for Loretta Butler Turner.
The Honorable Loretta Butler Turner, thank you so much for being a part of Let's Talk Live today. Certainly a pleasure having you. Wish you well as you continue your political journey.
Thank you very much, and good day, Bahamas. Thank you, Carlton.
Today's show is brought to you by the Island Game, Commonwealth Building Supplies, also known as CBS Bahamas, Icon of the Islands, KFC, Total Services, your energy solutions provider in New Providence, NHI Bahamas, Commonwealth Bank, your personal